Some would describe her as a healer, some would say oracle, but many accounts describe Julia Brown as an evil voodoo priestess who cursed the entire town of Frenier, Louisiana, resulting in almost 300 people losing their lives. Hey everyone, welcome back to Papa Seer's YouTube channel. If you love diving into captivating stories about hoodoo history, Black American spirituality, and so much more, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you always know whenever I post a new video. I'll give you a moment right now to go ahead and hit like and also subscribe. Welcome back to the Hoodoo and Chill podcast. It is me, Papa Seer, host, narrator, and storyteller of the #1 hoodoo and spirituality based podcast, the Hoodoo and Chill podcast. Today we are doing another Mythbusters episode where I am going to discuss the story of Julia Brown. I have talked about her in the past before, but never on YouTube, and this is one of those stories that really means something to me. I don't know, sometimes certain people just seem to stick with me a little bit more than others, and I have to do so much research on so many different people. But the story of Julia Brown really stuck with me because if you were to search anything about her right now, and I encourage you to, the common narrative about this woman is that she was evil. She was the reason why this devastating hurricane came through this town and literally leveled it, killed a lot of people, and people blamed this occurrence on this woman. And for some reason, every time I would hear that story being told in that manner, it just didn't sit well with my heart. And I decided, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, to put out a podcast episode about it in my earlier days of podcasting. But I wanted to revisit it on YouTube today and take a look at this story from a different lens. I'm not sure if many of you have even heard of this story in the way that it is going to be told today. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into the story of Julia Brown. So let's go back in time to 1845. This is the year that Julia Brown was possibly born. This was in Louisiana, 2 decades prior to emancipation of slavery in the United States of America. So the first thing we have to take in is that this woman spent the first 20 years of her life witnessing the enslavement of her people. Her ancestry is traced back to Africa, possibly through a Haitian lineage. Some believe due to her ancestry, this is what may have been an element to influence her spiritual practices. Her formative years were spent in Louisiana, which is significant into the later part of this story. While she was in Louisiana, Julia Brown became known as a healer. She learned the traditional methods of folk healing, and by the 1860s, she had established a reputation of being well known for her work, her cures, in her own right. But then there was also something else special about Julia Brown. Some refer to her as an oracle, or she was known to prophesize, give visions, tell fortunes, the whole nine. As many people who were in the business of healing, a lot of them blended the art of divination with their healing practices. Now, there isn't any definitive evidence to link Julia Brown to the religion of voodoo. However, this was the conversation being had about her, that she was engaged in that practice. Now, this is a part of the story that I have to challenge it a little bit because the term voodoo has been used so incorrectly interchangeable, that she possibly could have been a hoodoo practitioner. She could have just very well have been a healer or spiritualist. So many different ways the rabbit hole could fall. I'm not 100% sure if she was involved in the religion or culture of Louisiana voodoo. However, this is the rumor that was surrounding her. So you, the audience, you all are left to believe what spirit tells you to believe. And tell me in the comments what your spirit leads you to believe about this situation. That was she connected to Louisiana voodoo? Was she connected to hoodoo? Was she connected to both? Or was she just simply a woman who was a healer? Whatever her spiritual beliefs were, around this time, Julia Brown started to develop a reputation where people, of course, needed her. She was the town healer, but people also feared her too and avoided her, is what the story says, that people would avoid her in the town. Again, there is no definitive evidence about her being linked to New Orleans voodoo. It very well could have been something else. But we have to remember that during this time, that was illegal in New Orleans. The fear of her potentially being involved in that or hoodooism could have been what sparked the gossip, which inspired people to speak ill about her. Or maybe it was a situation where she wasn't the most customer friendly and people didn't like her. So they might have went to her because they needed to, but didn't enjoy the experience, and they could have started gossiping about her in that manner because of that. There are many different factors who could have persuaded, this reputation that she gained about being feared. Then, of course, there is always the factor of she could have very well have been a woman to fear. Like, she wasn't afraid to fix you. She wasn't afraid to put a spirit on you. She was not afraid to lay a root down. She was not afraid to lay a trick. She could have very well been that type of person. So when we tell these stories, I always want you to think about it in the many different ways this could have went. It will inspire your brain, inspire your thinking. Okay, let's move on. Now, despite all of the gossip and the rumors that surrounded Julia, what is known about her is that she offered her services majority of the time for free. She didn't charge people on a regular basis. I'm pretty sure she took donations and things of that nature, or there was the barter system. She had to eat, of course, but it was noted that she did not charge for her services. She ended up moving from New Orleans to the town of Frenier, which was a remote community. There was no roads, no electricity, and no medical services. Also in Frenier, the homes were built on raised platforms to guard against flooding. So this was a town that was prone to flooding. Frenier was also a town that had initially thrived on the timber industry. They later transitioned to cabbage and was known for its production of sauerkraut. When Julia relocated to Frenier, she lived in an area that was swampy. Her role in Frenier changed drastically. She became the town midwife. She was also the town healer. And from accounts, she was heavily relied on because of the remote location where Frenier was located. There were absolutely no doctors. Julia's service was not only isolated to Frenier, she would also travel to Ruddock, which was 30 miles away. There she would also treat patients, and she would also serve as a midwife as well. Before I go further, I want to take a moment and backtrack just so her profile can be understood in its entirety. We have this woman who has learned the art of healing, the art of spiritual healing. She is a gifted woman. She has the gift of premonition, and she is utilizing herself as a civil servant to a town that has no health care. And the reason why I wanted to take this moment so that we can really digest her character, because I want us to be able to offer her grace today and look past this story, not only for its tragedy, but also the character of who Julia Brown was. This was a woman who obviously cared about her community, regardless of the fact that she was giving healthcare services away for free. And the consequences of that was the community talked about her viciously. They were scared of her. There was constant rumor and gossip surrounding this woman who put herself in the role of being used as a civil servant to the public, and not only for the city of New Orleans, but when she moved to Frenier, she also would walk 30 miles so that she could offer healthcare services to the neighboring town of Roanoke as well. I want that to sink in, because in the event, let's say that the legend is true, that she utilized some spiritual gift or ritual to bring tragedy on this town. Not saying that I condone the act if it is true, but understanding where her mindset was, who she was, or what would have triggered her to do something so horrific. Or, again, because this is a Mythbusters episode, maybe she wasn't the cause of this hurricane, and maybe this town had just got caught up at the wrong place at the wrong time. Because if you look at the details of her character, this is not leaning towards someone who was just malicious and didn't like people. If anything, it is sounding like Julia Brown was a people's person. Before she was Julia Brown, she was Julia Bernard. She married into the Brown name. In 1880, Julia married Celestin Brown. He was a laborer in Frenier. From all accounts, the marriage seemed to be rooted in love, mutual respect, mutual understanding. Celestin himself was a landowner, 40 acres of swampland to be specific. Celestin and Julia were married, and I want to step out there and use the word happily married for 34 years. Things took a turn in 1914 when Celestin died. There are no accounts. I was not able to find any records of, his death or anything like that, but it was notated that he died in 1914. Now, upon his death, Julia inherited 40 acres, and this land had been granted by the government. So I'm going to take a moment and step away from fact and offer you all my own personal opinion and my own personal theory on what I think happened here and why this event, Celestin's death in 1914, is so important. So at this time, Julia is approximately 70 years old. A 70-year-old Black woman owning 40 acres of land that was originally owned by her Black husband, which was, again, granted to them from the government. My belief is that there was some form of conflict over that land. And I truly believe that it was vulnerable and that maybe someone was making threats about taking it. Was the bank trying to take it from her? Was the government trying to confiscate it or take it back? Again, none of this is definitive. None of this is written down, but this is my theory. And if you all agree, or if you all have different theories on what do you think was the event that really just sparked something or triggered something in Julia, Drop it in the comments and let me know. What is your theory? What do you think triggered her in this moment? Now, I am going to offer you all a second theory, because after Celestin's death, this is where we walk ourselves into the tragedy of Frenier. She was married to this man for 34 years, and again, from all accounts, this was the love of her life. Was Julia Brown truly heartbroken to the point where she wanted to make everyone else in the town feel what she felt? Again, she was living in a town where everyone was talking about her, everyone feared her, except this one man who fell in love with her, shared his land with her, and gave her a happy life for 34 years. I want you all to think about that. Let's get back to the story. After Celestin's passing, Julia changed, and the narrative about her changed drastically. There was no more account about her involving herself in the medical field or offering any more remedies or healing to the community. The only thing that is said about Julia after Celestin's death is that she would sit on her front porch and she would sing this eerie song to people who would pass by her property. The lyrics, again, not definitive, but the lyrics of the song are said to have said, "One day I'm going to die and take the whole town with me. When I die, I'll take half of Frenier with me." Extremely eerie. Imagine walking by this elderly woman where all of these whispers of her being this extremely malevolent voodoo sorceress, and she sings this song. Maybe she's strumming a guitar, rocking back and forth slowly. You walk by, you can feel this chilling presence of something on the horizon to come as you hear her voice trail off. Maybe she's even picking out a guitar. The day is September 28th, 1915. Julia Brown passes away at the age of 70. It is said, on the day of her funeral, a powerful hurricane struck Frenier. This storm was classified as a Category 4 hurricane. It caused catastrophic destruction with wind speeds up to 125 miles per hour and 13-foot storm surge. Frenier, along with neighboring communities like Ruddock, was wiped out, leaving no survivors to recount the events firsthand. Julia's body was recovered, but her casket was never found, adding to the eerie legacy of her death. Julia's story has become an enduring Louisiana legend. It blends historical facts with the local folklore. Some remember her as a benevolent healer and spiritualist, while others highlight the mystique and the fear surrounding her predictions. Today, her life and events of the 1915 hurricane are subjects of intrigue, studied by historians and explored through ghost tours. My question to you is, how do you view Julia Brown? Do you see her as a malevolent figure, someone or a woman who wielded the immense power to alchemize the weather? Or do you see a civil servant, a humble community servant, a woman caught up in the crossfires of gossip, a woman caught up in the crossfires of misunderstanding of Black American spiritual practices, a healer who was never truly appreciated in the way that she should have been, a doctor in her own right, the only doctor of two communities? This was Julia Brown, healer, oracle, and the keeper of a haunting prophecy. She was loved by some, feared by others, and forever linked to one of Louisiana's deadliest storms. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, then give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends and respective communities. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so let's get the conversation started in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Papa Seer for more intriguing stories from Hoodoo history, and I'll see you in the next video.